This winter, deep state minions from around the world are going to converge on Scotland to plan your future, and it's not going to be a pretty one if they succeed. Stay tuned and I'll tell you more. Hey everybody, Alex Newman here. Thanks for tuning in another episode of Behind the Deep State, where we give you the real story about what's going on in the news and in politics and in economics and in international affairs. Today I want to talk to you about the COP26, the 26th Conference of the Parties. All of the governments of the world are planning this big shindig in Glasgow in Scotland, and they're going to be getting together to unveil more climate shenanigans. Supposedly they're going to save us from global warming. Now, for the last 4 years, the UN climate summits have been rather underwhelming because with President Trump in office, they really couldn't do much. In fact, President Trump did some heroic things. He pointed out over and over and over again before becoming president that this was based on a hoax, was the term he used. It's a fraud. And so when he became president, he got us out of the Paris Agreement. He said, this is ridiculous. We're not going to waste all our money. We're not going to let other governments tell us what we should be doing. But now we are in a new era. We've got Beijing Biden occupying the White House at the moment, and he has already said that he is going to be going to the COP26. That's a sign that big things are going to be happening, and he's already teasing the climate Nazis, which is the terminology used by some wonderful climate scientists who are sick of the climate Nazis bossing everybody around, and they actually correctly pointed out that millions of people would die from these silly policies if they were implemented. But anyways, Biden is going to go there, and the climate Nazis are really excited. And Biden has already pledged that we're going to double the doubling. So he says now America is going to spend, and not America, American taxpayers, right? Joe Biden won't be spending any money, but they'll be printing and taxing the American people to spend almost $12 billion per year in this giant green slush fund that they're using to bribe and bully other governments to jump on board. They've got this green climate fund. They've got agents of mass murdering dictators sitting there, and it is a giant slush fund, guys. What they're doing is they're going to third world governments and saying, look, you keep your people poor, you make sure they can't develop reliable energy, you make sure your country never gets to have real electricity and reliable power, and we'll give you lots of money, and you can use that to buy private jets and to build up your mansions and to hire more soldiers to keep you in power, et cetera, et cetera. So Joe Biden comes along, and he now has announced, actually in April, he said we'd be spending $5.7 billion per year on this abomination. Now he's pledged $11.5 billion. He hasn't yet figured out if Congress is going to pass it yet, but I think he assumes that they will. We'll have to see what happens in 2022. But the UN globalists are saying we need $100 billion per year for this green climate slush fund. Now, keep in mind, this $11.5 billion every year that Sleepy Joe Biden wants to send to them, that's going to come from an economy that is going to be increasingly under pressure because Biden is doing everything he can, and we've written about it very extensively in the New American, to shut down our industries, to have the cost of energy skyrocket. Folks, if you live in the northern part of the country this winter, prepare to pay big money for your heating bills, especially if you live in New England or some of the leftist left coast states. Things are going to get tough. But so on the one hand, they're destroying our economy. They're killing the pipelines. They're forcing us to import huge amounts of oil. They're driving the cost of everything up. On the other hand, they're saying we're going to shovel more money at this atrocity that is about to take place in Glasgow. Now, just the other day, actually at the end of September, we had Pope Francis, who's been a leading cheerleader of these climate shenanigans. He gave an address to the Assembly of the Council of Europe, another globalist front group, where he said that this climate initiative needs to be huge. I'm quoting here, he says, everything is connected. As a family of nations, we must have a common concern to see that the environment is cleaner, purer, and preserved. He says we got to take care of nature so that it takes care of us. Now, keep in mind, CO2 doesn't harm nature. In fact, CO2 is the gas of life. I remember learning, and probably all of you learned, at least if you're over like 20, that CO2 is the gas of life. You exhale about 2 pounds of it every day. The plants use that gas for photosynthesis, and then they release oxygen, and this is the circle of life. Now, in interviewing Trump's climate advisor, Dr. Will Happer, he explained that the Earth is currently starving for more CO2. He said plants were designed to live in an atmosphere with 4 to 5 times as much carbon dioxide. Again, carbon dioxide is not a pollution. This is why farmers pump it into their greenhouses to make the plants grow properly. And yet, we're being told now by these UN globalists that CO2 is a pollution and that if we just let them tax and regulate it, everything is going to be fine. Now, these people clearly don't walk the walk. John Kerry, who's serving as Biden's climate czar, has been jet setting all over the world in private jets. He actually went to go pick up his climate leadership award in Iceland on a private jet. Folks, these people are laughing at you. They think you're a sucker. We're going to fly on private jets. We're going to eat steaks and fancy oysters and caviar. We're going to go party in exotic locations around the world. We'll go to Rio and Cancun and Bali. And you suckers, you need to ride your bikes. You need to live in poverty. You need to stop consuming energy because you're bad for the planet. This is grotesque, folks. And they're trotting out children to advance this disgusting agenda. In fact, just the other day, they had Greta Thunberg, the poor little mentally challenged Swedish girl. I think she's autistic or she's got Asperger's or something. These kids, they're easy to manipulate. And once they latch on to something, they're just, nonstop. And so they're exploiting this poor little girl with mental issues. And she's out there lecturing world leaders for being blah, blah, blah on climate action, mocking global leaders. So this is what they're doing, right? They're creating the good cop, bad cop. The good cop is the climate activists that are all being funded by the government. And then the bad cop. And so they meet in the middle and boom, we get massive climate action. Now, I do want to point out that after Trump withdrew from the UN Paris Agreement, the UN actually admitted that the Paris Agreement would be completely and utterly useless, even if you believe their silly calculations, even if you believe their hysteria. They said that this Paris, if any government in the world lived up to its obligations under the Paris Agreement, they said, and I'm quoting here, this would represent, quote, only a third of what is needed to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. In other words, the Paris Agreement is worse than useless. But, folks, this is not about saving the climate. This is about enslaving humanity. Again, there's nothing you can do that doesn't produce CO2. So if you submit to this idea that the gas you exhale is pollution, that everything you do is producing pollution, and that we need the UN to tax and regulate that pollution, you become officially a slave of the climate Nazis. It is a totally fraudulent hypothesis. In fact, there was just a new study that I wrote about recently that came out on The Sun. It's a person that we've interviewed quite a few times, Dr. Willie Soon, and a team of dozens of scientists around the world. This was a very, very interesting study. I wrote about this in August, and what they found was that if you just use different data sets to look at these questions. And actually, they pointed out that there are some NASA data sets. If you use these NASA data sets, it's called the ACRIM, the ACRIM sun monitoring data. You can actually show that all of the warming that humanity has experienced over the last decades can be completely explained by changes in solar activity. All it takes is using a different data set, and yet the UN very carefully cherry picks which data sets they're going to use to make sure that they can claim that the global warming is being caused by the gas that you exhale. Folks, this is very, very dangerous. And again, to prove to you that these people don't believe the garbage that they're spewing, I want you to pay attention to China. China is building coal-fired power plants faster than we can even count them. They're building something like one new coal-fired power plant every week. So in America, we're shutting down our energy production. We're shutting down our energy industries. We're shutting down the manufacturing businesses that depend on being able to have effective and reliable and cheap energy, and we're shipping all of that to China, where they produce massively more CO2 per unit of output than we do in America. If you really believed that CO2 was pollution, which, by the way, again, is preposterous, it's a lie, it's ridiculous. Anybody with a real understanding of science knows that that's absurd. CO2 has been far, far higher in the atmosphere at other times in Earth's history, and the Earth did not warm. And in fact, back during the about 1,000 years ago, when it was much warmer, when Vikings were farming on Greenland. They don't want you to talk about that. But this idea that CO2 is going to kill us is absolutely preposterous. And so if they get away with this, folks, it will be the end of your liberty. And again, if you want to know, if you want to prove that these people don't believe what they are saying, just look at China. Okay, is CO2 from China better than CO2 from America, or better than CO2 from Japan, or better than CO2 from Europe? It's ludicrous, right? If our leaders truly believed, and I say our leaders, they're not my leaders, but if the world leaders, self-proclaimed world leaders, the Joe Biden and Boris Johnson over in the UK and all these clowns, if they truly believed that CO2 was a toxic pollution, they'd say, hey, we should manufacture more stuff in America because then there will be less CO2 in the atmosphere. Whereas if we ship all our jobs and all of our industry to China, there's going to be more CO2 in the atmosphere. This isn't rocket science, folks. What it proves is that these clowns don't even believe the lies that they are selling you. If they really thought CO2 was bad, they'd focus on China. Instead, they're focused on destroying your life and your business and your job, just like they did with the COVID. If you thought the COVID lockdowns were bad, wait until these maniacs get to their climate lockdowns, folks. And you noticed all the climate Nazis say, oh, wow, these COVID lockdowns are wonderful. CO2 emissions are dropping. This is crazy talk, folks. This is absolutely crazy talk. It's anti-human. It is another deep state ploy to take away your freedom, to undermine the national sovereignty of your country, and ultimately to empower this global totalitarian system that is not going to save you from climate change. In fact, it's not going to save you from anything. It's going to liberate you from your freedom. It's going to liberate you from your prosperity, and it is going to be the equivalent of a giant boot stepping on the face of humanity forever if we let them get away with it. So Beijing, Biden is making big plans. We here at the New American, we've been going to these climate summits for decades. If they let us go in without taking the clot shots, we will plan to be there this year as well, God willing. But keep us in your prayers, folks, and get active on this front, guys. We need our governors, we need our state legislatures, we need our counties, and we need our members of Congress to put their foot down and say, no, we're not going to further bankrupt the United States. No, we're not going to shut down our industry so that China can emit a bunch of CO2 into the atmosphere. That's crazy talk. That's another deep state scheme. It's not going to fly. And folks, if we don't get busy, if we don't stop this, they're going to get away with it. You can kiss your freedoms goodbye. You can kiss your prosperity goodbye. It will be the end of the modern civilization that we have come to take for granted. You're not going to be able to power a modern civilization with windmills and solar panels and unicorn flatulence, folks. It's not going to happen. The Chinese know that. That's why they're building coal-fired power plants faster than we can count them. Don't be a fool. Don't be a sucker. Get the word out. Spread this video around. Go to thenewamerican.com. We've got tons of articles on this. You don't have to be a scientist to read our articles. We've done articles just looking at the predictions that the UN has made over the last few decades. First it was global cooling, then it was global warming, then it was climate change. We've looked at their predictions in an honest way, and what we found is that they could not have been more wrong, folks. They're lying to you, they're deceiving you, they're covering up the truth, and the plan is to enslave you, not save you from global warming. So get the word out. Again, I'm Alex Newman. Thank you for watching Behind the Deep State. Please share this video. Please go to thenewamerican.com. Share our articles there and get involved, folks. We have got to put the deep state on defense, or you can kiss it all goodbye. Again, thanks for watching, and until next week, God bless you all. If you liked this video, then click that subscribe button with the little bell. If you didn't like this video, you're probably a member of the deep state. Am I wrong? Prove it. Hit the subscribe button. Just kidding. Thanks again, folks. God bless.